The exam expects you to know the Amazon Lambda best practices, so I want to give them to you right away, and we're just going to see one or two into the hands-on. The first one I think is the most important, which is to perform heavy-duty work outside of your function handler, and we'll see this in the hands-on, how this looks like. But basically, if you connect to your database, please connect to the database outside of your function handler. Otherwise, every time your function handler is invoked, you're going to reconnect to your database. Same for the Amazon SDK or any other long stuff. Make it outside of your function handler. If you pull in dependencies or datasets, again, you don't want to pull it many times. You pull them outside of your function handler, and using something called the execution context, your AWS Lambda will be able to reuse all these heavy-duty work and only have subsequent execution of your function to be much more efficient. We'll see this in the hands-on. Now you should use environment variables for database connection string S3 bucket. Don't ever put them directly into your code. It is really bad practice. That's what environment variables are for. And in case you use passwords or sensitive values, definitely use environment variables for them. They can be encrypted using KMS. Remember that your environment variables only have 4 kilobyte of size maximum. Something to know. You need to minimize your deployment package size and make sure that the only thing you put in your code and the dependencies is what is exactly need to run. So you need to break down a function if it's too big, and I've seen this before. Some people have too many functions or too much stuff into one function. So breaking down into several Lambda functions, and always remember the Lambda limits in terms of how big your package must be. So 50 megabytes compressed, 250 megabytes uncompressed. Never ever use recursive code. So never have your Lambda function invoke itself, otherwise you're going to have concurrency hell and your bill will go through the roof and it's not good at all, so don't use recursive code. And finally, don't put your Lambda function into a VPC unless you have to. The reason is if you put it in their VPC, it will take a little bit longer to be initialized, whereas if you don't put it in the VPC, it will be very, very quick to initialize the first time it's called. So that's it for the best practices. Let's just go see the first part into the hands-on. So I am in my latest function, and so I'm going to edit the code real quick and show you what I mean by the heavy-duty work outside. So let's remove all this, and we'll just say, here we'll have a print statement and say connecting to the database, right? So the first thing we do when we call our Lambda function, and this is the bad way of doing things, is that we're connecting to the database. I'm going to import the time, and so it turns out that connecting to the database, I will simulate it to be equal to maybe 2 seconds. Okay, so connecting to the database takes 2 seconds. And then I'll print connected to the database because we have indeed connected to the database. And now we're just going to, do some work. So here I will say do some work. Okay, and then we return the event key1. So we echo back some value. So let's have a look, save our function into latest and then test it. And so it turns out that our function takes 2 seconds to execute and it works. So 2 seconds to execute. And if we look at the log outputs, it says connecting to the database, connected to the database, do some work, and then it's done. If I retest it again, one more time, we'll see what happens. It takes another 2 seconds. So every time we run our function, we are connecting to the database, and every time we're connecting to the database, we are doing some work. And so that's quite bad when you think about it, because every time we run the code, it will take 2 seconds to reconnect to the database. But we sort of wish that we were connected to this database all the time, right? And so what I can do here is best practice is to move this heavy duty work outside of my function. So here I'm going to instead, and I need to remove the tabs. I'm going to instead, when the function is being loaded, I'm going to be connecting to the database from there, which is going to take 2 seconds, and then I'll be connected to the database. And then when I do some work, I'm basically able to reference to my connection string of my database, which has been done outside of my handler. And this is best practice. So let's save this function. And now I'm going to run it. So let's click on test. And as we can see, the first execution took only 16 milliseconds. And if we scroll down to see the execution results, we can see that it did some work. And so it was only 16 milliseconds. Now, if I basically test this again, we get only 44 milliseconds and so on. That's because our database initialization work was done outside of our Lambda function. And so all this idea of loading the function, connecting to database and connecting to database, that was just done the first time. And then every time we just call our Lambda handler, we can do some work and have some blazing quick execution. Now the log doesn't necessarily print those for some reason. Probably can find them in CloudWatch. But the idea is that this is best practice. Anything, any heavy duty work, any connection to database or initialization of an AWS client should be done outside of your handler. So that's it for this lecture. I hope you liked it, and I will see you in the next lecture.